Hey guys, this unit we are talking about cell transport and across the cell membrane. But this gives you a good just kind of like brings it into real life. So you guys read this on your own. We'll talk about it in class, but I do want you to kind of read this what this means. And there's the disorders, cystic fibrosis, so we will talk about it through the lesson. All right, the cell membrane. What kind of cells have these? We know this. This is all cells. All cells have cell membranes. It's composed of phospholipids and transport proteins. You should be able, and you should have done this, draw and label this. If you don't have this in your notes, you go ahead and draw and label this. So all these are the polar heads, the non-polar fatty acid tails. This is a transport protein. You must be able to identify that. So the function is to move things in and out of the cell. What kind of cells have cell membranes? All cells. The movement of substances across the cell membrane is two methods. So we have cell transport here, and two ways that we do it. So if we're going to do a graphic organizer in class, and we will, is passive, which are, oh my goodness, passive, which requires no energy, and active, which does require energy. Passive is like going down a hill. Also type is called facilitated diffusion. That's down a hill. And active is going up a hill. Like if you were to ride your bike and you pedal going up a hill, that requires energy and ATP. Diffusion. In the world, I'm so sorry. Trying to move myself and I'm messing up. Diffusion is the act of moving molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low when molecules spread out. And this would be like if you turn the gas on in the science lab and you hear all that the gas coming right there, it's going to spread out into the room, which is its container, until it's something called dynamic equilibrium, where all the molecules are kind of spaced out evenly. So that is diffusion. I mean, a kind of gross example is also toot. Like if you were to toot or fluffy and you pass gas, that smell is going to spread out throughout the container. And it's kind of gross, sorry. But that is diffusion, and that is actually passive transport. Diffusion can occur in the air or the water or across membranes. So perfume, if you put food coloring in water and you drop it in water, it will spread out. We put one little drop of food coloring like red, it will spread out the water until everything is pink. Perfume in the air, if you spray some, it will spread out. The cell membrane is semi-permeable or selectively permeable. Some things go in, some things can go out. Imagine it's like a screen door. Passive transport is always from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So high to low, and it goes with the concentration gradient. Diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis are all types of passive transport. The difference in these figures here is diffusion just goes across kind of anywhere. Facilitated diffusion is the molecules still go from high to low, but they must use this protein transport channel. It's the same thing. So if molecules high to low concentration, it has more molecules here, and then low concentration. And then facilitated, it must use a transport protein or a protein channel. Still goes from high to low. The three types of passive transport: facilitated diffusion, osmosis, which is diffusion of water, and diffusion. Equilibrium, when molecules are evenly spread out through a space. This means these particles are going to move until they reach something called dynamic equilibrium, where the amount of particles on both sides are equal. Osmosis is the diffusion of water. Things that can cross the cell membrane: water, oxygen, and other small molecules. Large molecules like sugar and salt cannot easily pass through. And this shows you how they can just go across the cell membrane. So water, oxygen, small molecules. Rule for osmosis: hate to say this, but salt sucks. If the area outside the salt has more salt, the water will be sucked out of the cell. Water moves towards the salt. Think about it like this. When we dehydrate something, we pull the water out. If we were to drink a whole lot of salt water, it would pull out the water. This is why if you're stranded in the ocean, do you drink the ocean water? You're stranded. Do you drink it? No, it's going to dehydrate you. It's going to cause your cells to shrink. So salt sucks, meaning salt pulls things out. This is super important to understand. Hypotonic means less solute particles. Hyper means more. So more solute particles. So you have in hypo, you have a lot of water, but less salt. But in a hypertonic solution, you would have a lot of salt. So the water is going to move. This is confusing if you don't pay attention. The water is going to move to an area of high to low, high water concentration to low water. Don't think about the particles, think about what the water is doing. So over here, notice how the water moved over here because it went from a high to low concentration. Cells in different solutions, okay? ISO means the same. Some solution means they're exactly the same. So what you have on the inside of the cell is what you have on the outside. So water is just doing exactly. ISO is equal. If you look here, and I'm going to show you guys this in class, but if this is 10% salt, then that means 90% water. And this is 10% salt, and that's 90% water. Well, what does water do? Water moves from an area of high to low. But if we have 90% water on the outside and 90 on the inside, it's going to just go back and forth. It's already at equilibrium. Okay. So always when you're given this, what is the other part, the other value? Okay, hypo means less. If the solution is hypotonic, water moves into the cell. Let's think about it. This is 10% salt, so it's 90% water. This is 20% salt, so it's 80% water. What does water do? It moves from what to what? High to low, 90% to 80%. So what will the cell do? This cell in a hypotonic environment would swell. It would get bigger. This is like hypertonic. Do we drink salt water? Absolutely not. No, the cell will shrink and die. Plants will wilt. Is it dangerous to drink seawater? Yes. Why does pouring salt on a slug kill it? What will that do to the slug? Don't do it. That's mean. But what will it do? It will dry that slug out. It will take all his water. All right, let's look at this one. Solution is hypertonic. 20% salt out here, 10% salt, okay? If this is 20% salt, how much water? 80. If this is 10% salt, how much water? 90. What does water do? Water moves from an area of high to low, so 90 to 80. And what will happen to the cell? It will shrink. It will shrink and die. This is something called a paramecium. We've actually talked about these little things right here. These are called cilia, and these are structures used for locomotion. Other structures we've used for locomotion are called what? Flagellum and pseudopodia. Those are other structures used for locomotion. The paramecium is a protist. It's a eukaryotic cell. So it has well-defined organelles. It's unicellular, but it's not a bacteria. So some freshwater organisms have a structure called contractile vacuoles. Well, what do? They actually regulate the organism and how much water is in it. Let's say you have a freshwater fish and a saltwater fish. Can a freshwater fish live in a saltwater environment? No. Why? What will a freshwater fish do in a saltwater environment? He will get all like shriveled up. Can't live there. So what these organisms do, and it's important, they're fresh water, they have a contractile vacuole. Well, in fresh water, that water wants to go racing in. So they have this little thing right here, which actually causes them to expel water as needed. So that's the contractile vacuole. You don't really have to know all the parts of that exactly, but just do know like a freshwater organism has a way to get rid of that water. Otherwise, all that water would go racing in. So this is a paramecium. These are cilia out here, has food vacuoles, and then they are maintaining homeostasis because that is a part of life. All right, these are the types of solutions again. Another way to look at these. So we have hypertonic. What will our cells do? They will shrivel up. Also, a plant cell will do this. These are red blood cells, but ours will shrivel up. Isotonic, ooh, this is good. This is ideal for us. We want isotonic. Hypotonic, they will burst. They will burst. We will talk about in class, and you've heard me say that. You will hear me say this. Uh-oh, sorry. What will happen here is water will, there was a few years ago, and I don't remember how many years ago, a lady was competing to win a Wii, the video game, and she drank too much water in too short of a time period. Well, that diluted her sodium potassium pump, and she caused her cells to explode, and she did unfortunately pass away. And who would have thought this radio station wasn't thinking about that someone could overdose on drinking too much water. So this is the ideal environment. If someone is in the hospital, I don't know if you guys have ever known anybody in the hospital, but when they go in, if you're dehydrated, do you think they give you pure water in your veins? You know, they'll give you, so they'll hook you up to an IV, and they'll give you, they'll attach a little bag. And what is in that solution? Does anybody know? It's actually called a saline solution. So it has a little bit of like a salt, and not a little bit of salt solution, because they don't want to give you pure water. This would happen. They want to give you something that's like this, okay? An isotonic environment. Do we have salt in our body? We do. We do. If you sweat, it tastes salty. We do have salt in our body. Okay. Passive transport and osmosis, and this shows you what happens. Water moves to hypertonic areas, and I just went over why. You need to understand that, put a number with it. Okay, you can look at this a little longer on your own. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, have you ever gotten an IV? Here we go. 0.9% sodium chloride. Why is the solution in the bag not pure water? What would happen? All right. Passive transport requires no energy. Diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. I've talked about all those. I'm going to go a little faster. Okay. All right. What happens here? Why is the water moving towards the left side of the beaker? Which side is hypertonic? Salt is a solute. In the other examples, what is the solute in this example? That answer is sugar. See the sugar there? All right. Active transport. There's 3 types of active transport. This means goes against the concentration. You have to like push this in. It's like going up a hill. So it requires energy. Proteins found in the membrane move materials across. So this is active transport. So like going up a hill. Endocytosis. This means taking in larger molecules. Notice how the cell wraps around it. That's endocytosis. There are 2 types of endocytosis. If you do want to watch this video, the amoeba is about to consume the paramecium. The amoeba has what type of structure? It has a pseudopodia. It wraps that pseudopodia around that paramecium and takes it in. That's endocytosis. Look how slowly he does it. He just takes it in. This little mean amoeba. The 2 types of endocytosis, I do want you to write these down. These are pinocytosis, which is cell drinking, and phago or phagocytosis, either one, is cell eating. Pino, cell drinking, phago, cell eating. Exocytosis is the process of removing cells from removing waste from the cells. So if you notice here, you have a vesicle, Okay, these vesicles broke off that Golgi body. Okay, it's moving on out, and then all that, maybe this is a waste product, and then it gets rid of it. So removing waste from the cell. Exo. Endo means inside, exo means outside. And you can kind of look at that. Cystic fibrosis is caused by a problem with the cell membrane. And these lysosomes don't work correctly, and they actually end up with a buildup of too many things inside their membrane. But you can read about this, and we'll talk about this in class a little bit. Oh, no. Where's my thing? Okay. I think this might be my last slide. That is it. Thank you.